All right, so when you get your piece of fabric in class, now what you have here is a knit. This is just a jersey knit, and you have 1 yard. So it's gonna be 1 yard by 60 inches. So 60 inches is the width of the bolt. So that's from selvage to selvage. If we were to open that piece all the way, it's gonna be about 60 inches wide. Sometimes when you are sewing, you would leave the fabric just like it is, or with selvages lined up, and you would go ahead and put something on the grain or on the fold. But if I'm gonna do that with this, then I'm gonna have all this fabric that ends up getting wasted or much smaller pieces. So what you're gonna do here is you're gonna take one of the selvages. So I'm gonna take the selvage over here that's on the end, and I am going to just slide it across the table. And notice how I have 2 tables together. You can either do this on 2 tables, or you might even want to do this on the floor. 1 table is probably too narrow, because when the fabric hangs off the edge of the table, it ends up weighing down, and then it makes the other side of the fabric kind of get pulled in one direction or the other. Okay, so I've got this end open. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this selvage right here, and I am going to fold it over. And what I'm trying to do is I'm going to try to get that folded over the same width or very close to the size of my pattern piece. That is really, really close. Okay, but before I start cutting this out, I want to make sure this is really smooth and that I don't have any wrinkles. We need our grain line to be in line, so we don't want it angling down this way, we don't want it angling up that way. It needs to be straight and even going across so that the shirt doesn't start twisting on you when you're wearing it. So this is really nice and smooth. So I'm going to take, this is my back pattern piece for the Relaxed Raglan. Anytime you're laying out patterns, so if I laid this in the middle, I'm going to have a little bit of scrap here and a little bit of scrap here. So instead, I want to slide it up as high as I possibly can. Now I'm going to have a much smaller scrap up at the top and a much larger scrap down here at the bottom. Now you will want to grab something that can act as a pattern weight, maybe a couple of pin cushions, washers, you can use tiles. There's lots of different options for you there, but you need something to weigh the pattern piece down. Depending on the circumstances that you are making your project in, you may want to do this on a cutting table using a rotary cutter. However, in my class, we only have 1 of those. So instead of doing that, you are just going to use sewing shears. So if your shears are not sharp, you'll want to get those really sharp, and you will just be cutting out your pattern. You're not going to be tracing it. You're just going to cut out right around the white paper that is laying on the gray fabric. When you are getting to the triangle notch on all of the pattern pieces, make sure to cut out around the notch. Do not cut it off, and do not cut it going to the inside of the pattern piece. Cut around it. Once you've cut out around that one piece, you can take off the pattern weights and remove the pattern piece. Next, you need to look at your fabric and determine if it is currently on the right side or wrong side out. With this gray, it is a little bit tricky to tell, but when you open it up, you can see inside it's a little bit duller, and there is just a little bit more of a matte finish. So this actually was cut with right sides out. This is important because I need to mark all my pattern pieces for my solids. If you can't really distinguish too easily which is the right side and which is the wrong, you're going to be marking it, and I'll show you how to do that next. So to label your fabric, you are going to get a piece of the painter's tape, either blue or green. You'll put your name on it, and you're going to put WS, meaning that is the wrong side, and then you're also going to label which pattern piece it is in case you forget later. That way, if the pattern asks you to take your back piece and your front piece, you'll know which is which, okay? So you will just take that piece and tear it off, and you'll stick it toward the middle of the fabric. I don't want it over on an edge or bottom where I'm going to actually be stitching, so I'm just going to stick it right here, and that's going to stay put for most of the project, just as a reminder of which piece that is and which is the right side or which is the wrong side. So for the next step, I'm going to cut out my front piece. I'm going to go ahead and just trim this up right here. And I'm gonna trim this area off just to kind of straighten it out. So for this piece, I'm gonna come in from the other side, do the exact same thing. I'm gonna fold this in about as wide as I feel like I need in order to cut that other piece, my front piece. And then I'll have quite a bit of leftover fabric to work with if I need it for one of the other parts of the. So from here, you're doing the same thing. Now here's one thing. Let's say you're laying your pattern out and you lay it like this. Well, this side is not supposed to be on the fold. This is. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn it like this, because this particular fabric doesn't have any kind of print on it. I can just turn the pattern any which way. The other thing I could do is, if I did have a pattern, let's say I had a floral and I wanted to make sure the floral is all going in the same direction, maybe it has one specific direction. So then instead of turning the pattern this way, I'm actually gonna flip it all the way over, face down, and now I've got the fold lined up here. And then if I had a pattern on my fabric that needed to go one direction, it would all be going in the correct way, okay? So I'm gonna repeat that same process, what we did on the other one. I need to pull that down just a little bit, but I do want it close to this top, so then I'll have this nice big piece across the bottom, and just lay my pattern weights down and go ahead and cut that piece out. So once again, I'm gonna take my label. This time I've got my wrong side and front. Now you do always wanna put the tape on the wrong side of the fabric, never on the right side. Just in case it does leave any kind of residue behind, you would want that to be on the inside of the shirt where you don't see it, as opposed to somewhere where it would be visible, okay? So I'm going to tape that right in there. And then next you need to refer to your design plan that you made in class to try to determine what else that you need to make out of the gray fabric. So you may have like a band at the bottom, you might have cuffs for your sleeves that you're gonna do out of gray, or maybe the neck. So if you're gonna do anything else out of the gray, you'd probably wanna go ahead and take care of that right now. And I'll show you a couple of examples on camera. When you're cutting the neckband, if you're in my class, I have gone ahead and made this pattern piece for you to use. So you'll wanna find one of those. And it is 2.5 inches across this way, and the width of it is going to be 20 inches. So depending on your size of neckband that you need, all of the neckbands are gonna be the 2.25 inches across, but then some of them need to be slightly shorter or slightly longer than that 20 inches. So you'll just add or take away a bit of that, whatever size your pattern calls for. So I have this fabric still laid out. Now again, this way is the way that it does not stretch. So even though my pattern piece would fit nicely right there, I'm not going to cut it in this way, because we want the width of the fabric, this long ways right here, to go with the stretch. So instead, I'm gonna lay it down right over here where it's going with the stretch of the fabric. Okay, so now that is laying across the width of that band is across the stretch of the fabric. And that will just allow for whenever you're putting the shirt over your head, for the neckband to stretch out enough so that it goes over your head. And usually, so right now my neckband is wrong side up, so I've already made my tape label. I'm gonna put that right here in the middle. McNew, I've labeled it with neck, and then it's on the wrong side. So what I've done here is I have made a template for the band around the waist. Most of the sizes call for, if you're doing the tight or the loose waistband, for 7 inches tall. So that's gonna go this direction. And again, on the width, that's gonna go with the stretch. So this template is 7 inches across the top, going from here to here. And then what I did is I just labeled several different markings, so this can work for lots of different patterns. This particular one needs to go out to 33 inches, 7 by 33, but if you needed it at 35, you could just crease and fold down the 35 line, or for the loose band, it's at 41. So it really just depends on your particular design, which one you've chosen. So I'm folding on the 33-inch line. I'm just gonna line up with this bottom cut edge here, and then I am going to just trim around, let me get that straightened out, there we go. Trim around that rectangle, and then that would be my waistband if you were doing that. Now if you're just doing a regular hem, you don't need to do this piece, okay? You could just skip this step altogether if you are not adding a cuff or not adding a waistband. So we're getting ready to cut out the sleeves next, and you'll do this just a little bit different. You're gonna be cutting two pieces, and so you're not cutting this piece on a fold. So for this, you actually do want your selvages lined up. So I have my two selvages over here on this side lined up even. My fabric has a direction to it, so I am a Royals fan, but I love my friend so much that when she said she wanted a Cardinals baseball tee, I said I would do it for her. So this is some St. Louis Cardinals knit. It is from Joann's, but the St. Louis Cardinals sign and the wording all goes in the same direction. So I want to make sure that I don't put my pattern piece on upside down. So you will want to make sure on your pattern the same thing, that you do not have it going upside down. What I'm going to look at here is this is the grain line. So I need it to be in line with my grain line of my fabric. And then it also has the stretch line going across here. So this is the direction that the fabric stretches. I want to get it close to the selvage, but I don't want it to be on top of it. And again, I want it to get as close to the top as I can, so that I just don't have any waste. So I am, after cutting out these two pieces, I'm gonna have this really nice big piece down here, plus a whole bunch on that fold left over to make something else with. So I'm gonna lay down some items on the pattern to weigh it down a little bit while I cut it. Just as we have previously done, you're going to remove the pattern weights, and then you're going to label the wrong side of both of your pieces. You'll just want to make sure that you cut all the way through. So for the sleeves, you should have two separate pieces, and these were cut what is called mirror image. So they are going to be, when you have them folded in half like this and layered with two layers, they automatically are mirror images. Okay, so you are going to flip to the wrong side and just put your label on it. Now this one, because it has a print on it, it's pretty obvious that this is the wrong side, but I still want to put the tape on here because, especially in class, if you drop a pattern piece or a piece of your fabric on the way back to your tray, or if someone else in the classroom has the same fabric as you, we just want that label on there just to keep it straight. So you'll go ahead and label both of those. Once you have cut everything out, you can do a quick little inventory. So you should have a neckband. Everyone should have a neckband. Everyone should have two sleeves. Everyone should have a front piece and a back piece. Some of you may have additional pieces. If you are putting cuffs on your sleeves, you will need two of those cuffs according to whatever size you need. You will cut it in the same manner that you cut the neck. If you are doing the cuffed waistband, there's lots of different options for that. You can make one that's loose, one that's tight, one that's longer, one that's shorter. If you do that, there's going to be one additional piece. So you'd have just one big band going around the whole bottom of the shirt, okay? But if you're just doing a traditional hem where you fold it under, then you will not have those extra pieces, okay? So at a minimum, you're gonna have 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. Some of you may have 7 and some of you may have 8, not including the triangle or the elbow patches. So some of you, depending on your design plan, may end up with quite a bit more than this. Look over your design plan and make sure that you have everything that you need. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to deal with the scraps. So if you have scraps that are large enough that we could reuse them, like I would probably want you to trim right across here, and you're going to bring me this scrap. But stuff like this that's really thin and I can't use that for anything, we will get rid of that. Okay, if you have big pieces, get things as squared up as you can and bring all those pieces back up to me so that we can store them and potentially use them for other future projects.